Section 5. Pell. Q-Zone. Orange 9. 1900 hours. There were still people standing in line outside, a queue stretching down the Niner Hall out onto the dock. Vasily Kresik rested his head against the heels of his hands as the most recent went out in the ungentle care of one of Collity's men. A woman who had shouted at him, who had complained of theft and named one of Collity's gang. His head ached, his back ached. He abhorred these sessions, which he held, nevertheless, every 5 days. It was at least a pressure valve, this illusion that the counselor of Q listened to the problems, took down complaints, tried to get something done. About the woman's complaint, little remedy. He knew the man she had named. Likely it was true. He would ask Nino Cullity to put the lid on him, perhaps save her from worse. The woman was mad to have complained. A bizarre hysteria, perhaps, that point which many reached here, when anger was all that mattered. It led to self-destruction. A man was shown in, Redding next in line. Kresik braced himself inwardly, leaned back in his chair, prepared for the weekly encounter. "We're still trying," he told the big man. "I paid," Redding said. "I paid plenty for my pass." "There are no guarantees in Downbelow applications, Mr. Redding. The station simply takes those it has current need of. Please put your new application on my desk, and I'll keep running it through the process. Sooner or later, there'll be an opening." "I want out! James!" Kresik shouted in panic. Security was there instantly. Redding looked about wildly, and to Kresik's dismay, reached for his waistband. A short blade flashed into his hand, not for security. Redding turned from James. For him. Kresik flung himself backward on the chair's track. Des James hurled himself on Redding's back. Redding sprawled face down on the desk, sending papers everywhere, slashing wildly as Kresik scrambled from the chair and against the wall. Shouting erupted outside, panic, and more people poured into the room. Kresik edged over as the struggle came near him. Redding hit the wall. Nino Cullity was there with the others. Some wrestled Redding to the ground, some pushed back the torrent of curious and desperate petitioners. The mob waved forms they hoped to turn in. "My turn!" Some woman was shrieking, brandishing a paper and trying to reach the desk. They herded her out with the others. Redding was down, pinned by 3 of them. A 4th kicked him in the head, and he grew quieter. Cullity had the knife, examined it thoughtfully and pocketed it, a smile on his scarred young face. "No station police for him," James said. "You hurt, Mr. Kresik?" Cullity asked. "No." He discounted bruises, felt his way to his desk. There was still shouting outside. He pulled the chair up to the desk again and sat down, his legs shaking. "He talked about having paid money," he said, knowing full well what was going on, that the forms came from Cullity and cost whatever the traffic would bear. "He's got a bad record with station, and I can't get him a pass. What do you mean selling him an assurance?" Cullity turned a slow look from him to the man on the floor and back again. "Well, now he's got a bad mark with us, and that's worse. Get him out of here. Take him out down the hall, the other way." "I can't see any more people," Kresik moaned, resting his head against his hands. "Get them out of here." Cullity walked into the outer corridor. "Clear it out!" Kresik could hear him shouting above the cries of protest and the sobbing. Some of Cullity's men began to make them move. Armed, some of them, with metal bars. The crowd gave back, and Caldy returned to the office. They were taking Redding out the other door, shaking him to make him walk, for he was beginning to recover, bleeding from the temple and a red wash which obscured his face. "They'll kill him," Kressick thought. Somewhere in the less trafficked hours, a body would find its way somewhere to be found by station. Redding surely knew it. He was trying to fight again, but they got him out, and the door closed. "Mop that up," Collody told one of those who remained, and the man searched for something to clean the floor. Collody sat down again on the edge of the desk. Kressick reached under it, brought out one of the bottles of wine with which Collody supplied him. Glasses. He poured two, sipped at the downer wine, and tried to warm the tremors from his limbs, the twinges of pain from his chest. "I'm too old for this," he complained. "You don't have to worry about Redding," Collody told him, picking up his glass. "You can't create situations like that," Kressick snapped. "I know what you're up to, but don't sell the passes where there's no chance I'll be able to get them." Collody grinned, an exceedingly unpleasant expression. "Redding would ask for it sooner or later. This way, he paid for the privilege." "I don't want to know," Kressick said sourly. He drank a large mouthful of the wine. "Don't give me the details." "We'd better get you to your apartment, Mr. Kressick. Keep a little watch on you, just till this matter is straightened out." He finished the wine at his own rate. One of the youths in Collody's group had gathered up the stack of papers the struggle had scattered about the floor and laid it on his desk. Kressick stood up then, his knees still weak, averted his eyes from the blood which had tracked on the matting. Collody and 4 of his men escorted him through that same back door which had received Redding and his guards. They walked down the corridor into the sector in which he maintained his small apartment, and he used his manual key. Comp had cut them off, and nothing worked here but manual controls. "I don't need your company," he said shortly. Collody gave him a wry and mocking smile, parodied a bow. "Talk with you later," Collody said. Kressick went inside, closed the door again by manual, stood there with nausea threatening him. He sat down finally, in the chair by the door, tried to stay still a moment. Madness accelerated in Q. The passes which were hope for some to get out of Q only increased the despair of those left behind. The roughest were left, so that the temperature of the whole was rising. The gangs ruled. No one was safe who did not belong to one of the organizations, man or woman. No one could walk the halls safely, unless it was known he had protection, and protection was sold, for food, or favors, or bodies, whatever the currency available. Drugs, medical and otherwise, made it in. Wine did, precious metals, anything of value, made it out of queue and into the station. Guards at the barriers made profits. And Collody sold applications for passes out of queue, for Downbelow residency, sold even the right to stand in the lines for justice, and anything else that Collody and his police found profitable. The protection gang reported to Collody for license. There was only the diminishing hope of Downbelow, and those rejected or deferred became hysterical with the suspicion that there were lies recorded about them in station files, black marks which would keep them forever in queue. There were a rising number of suicides. Some gave themselves to excesses in the barracks halls which became sinks of every vice. Some committed the crimes, perhaps, of which they feared they were accused, and some became the victims. "They kill them down there?" one young man had cried, rejected. "They don't go to Downbelow at all.
They take them out of here and kill them. That's where they go. They don't take workers. They don't take young men. They take old people and children out, and they get rid of them."
"Shut up!" others had cried, and the youth had been beaten bloody by 3 others in the line before Collity's police could pull him out. But others wept and still stood in line with their applications for passes clutched in their hands. He could not apply to go. He feared some leak getting back to Collity if he put in an application for himself. The guards were trading with Collity, and he feared too much. He had his black market wine, had his present safety, had Collity's guards about him so that if anyone was harmed in Q, it would not be Vasily Kressik, not until Collity suspected he might be trying to break from him. Good came of what he did, he persuaded himself. While he stayed in Q, while he held the 5th-day sessions, while he at least remained in a position to object to the worst excesses, some things Collity would stop. Some things Collity's men would think twice about, rather than have an issue made of them. He saved something of order in Q, saved some lives, saved a little bit from the thing Q would become without his influence. And he had access to the outside, had that hope, always, if the situation here became truly unbearable, when the inevitable crisis came. He could plead for asylum, might get out. They would not put him back to die. Would not. He rose finally, hunted out the bottle of wine he had in the kitchen, poured himself a quarter of it, trying not to think of what had happened, did happen, would happen. Redding would be dead by morning. He could not pity him, saw only the mad eyes of the man staring at him as he lunged across the desk, scattering papers, slashing at him with the knife. At him, and not at Collity's guards. As if he were the enemy. He shuddered and drank his wine.